morning and welcome to our November 17th Budget and Facilities meeting. We have a lot of fun and exciting things and special guests today. Before we start, I just want to set the table a little bit for everyone on how today is going to happen, and also remind everyone on our committee that we discussed this would be a multi-meeting conversations. So the focus of today is to talk with our architect, Brian Graham, our superintendent, about our building condition survey and that long-term facility planning from the safety, security, infrastructure, academic, and co-curricular buckets. And we're going to look at it from that very big picture. There will be costs that we will see, and we will set the stage for how schools can fund things. But due to the fact that Ms. Manuel is not here today, we do not want to do that deeper dive into how we as a school district will necessarily be funding all of this. That will be the Part 2 December meeting. So I just ask that everyone kind of hold those questions for that next meeting so that we can be ready for that portion of the discussion. Is everyone in alignment with that? Is that wonderful? And with that, I'm going to just introduce who we have at the table here today. Our special guest is John Grillo, and I know Mr. Graham will be introducing him in just a minute, but just for those watching, I wanted to make sure they knew who was here. And with that, Dr. Posse, I'm going to let you open up with an exciting topic of how schools will fund long-range capital plans.
Yes, thank you. So, and thanks for setting that up and providing the context. And as Ms. Epstein said, my goal is just to give you an overview of different funding sources. And then, following the presentation in a subsequent meeting when Ms. Manuel is here, we can get into a discussion about which funding source is best for the district and for the board to consider. So earlier this year, just for context, the Board of Education adopted a set of goals that included a strong focus on facilities and operations. In response, the administration developed complementary district priorities to guide our work. One of these priorities is to maintain and enhance our facilities so that they remain safe, modern, and adaptive. We set out to create environments that inspire learning, support well-being, and meet the evolving needs of our students, staff, and community. We are fortunate to have beautiful buildings, and with that comes the ongoing responsibility to care for them. Our facilities require continuous maintenance and attention to ensure they continue to serve the community well. Over the last 2 decades, the district has periodically sought voter-approved bond issuances to complete large-scale renovations of our aging infrastructure. Between bond cycles, we have relied on available capital reserves and transfers to capital to complete smaller but still essential projects. So again, the purpose of today's meeting is to review the scale of work necessary to maintain and further modernize our buildings. In a moment, we will review the building condition survey. The building condition survey is conducted every 5 years by our district architect, John Grillo. It provides an infrastructure-focused assessment of each building, and the analysis should serve as the foundation for the funding conversation that will follow in a future meeting. So before I turn it over to Mr. Graham and Mr. Grillo, I'd like to walk the committee through the various mechanisms available to fund facility improvements. So Mr. Graham, if you could go to slide 2. So there are 4 primary funding sources for school districts: reserve funds, annual budget appropriations, New York State building aid, which is generated from voter-approved capital projects, and long-term borrowing. So Mr. Graham, if you go to slide 3. So first, let's discuss capital reserves. A capital reserve fund is a voter-approved savings account funded with excess monies at the end of a fiscal year. It allows the district to set aside funds for smaller projects between larger bond issuances. Importantly, the capital reserve has no additional impact on taxpayers. On May 17th, 2022, voters approved the creation of a facilities improvement reserve dedicated to electrical services, HVAC equipment, and similar projects. The reserve currently holds $2.1 million. When we're ready to expend these funds, we'll need additional voter authorization. If you can go to the next slide for me, please. Another reserve that I'd like the committee to consider is a repair reserve. This reserve would be dedicated solely to recurring major repairs. It may be established by the board and funded through the annual budget with voter approval. Any expenditure requires a 2/3 vote of the board and a public hearing. This reserve would have been particularly helpful this fall when addressing the unanticipated repairs to the Weber HVAC unit. So if the board agrees, we could prioritize establishing a repair reserve as a line item in the 26-27 budget. The benefits of the repair reserve are outlined on this slide. Chief among them is the operational flexibility it provides, allowing the district to address significant repairs without creating disruptions or placing additional strains on the annual operating budget. Go to slide 6. So this is our current approach to funding facilities improvements since our last bond issuance. Our current approach relies heavily on annual budget appropriations. For 25-26, we've budgeted $4.2 million to transfer to capital. This mechanism remains useful between larger bond issuances. And then today we'll review the priority projects identified through the building condition survey. And one of the things we'll discuss is how long it would take to complete them if we continue to rely primarily on this method. So before turning to long-term borrowing, I wanted to briefly address the New York State building aid. Port Washington's building aid ratio is 23.7%, and state is reimbursed over the life of any assumed debt. So long-term borrowing, typically through a bond, is an important funding option. Bonds allow the district to undertake major improvement projects that would be unrealistic to finance through the annual operating budget or through capital reserves alone. A bond enables the district to act sooner, prevent the deferral of necessary work, and preserve the operating budget so that smaller ongoing needs can continue to be addressed. In essence, a bond provides a forklift for large-scale improvements. If in the future the board chooses to pursue this path, we would recommend establishing a long-term facilities planning committee to review the building condition survey, tour our facilities, and develop a proposed scope of work. This committee would also consider academic and co-curricular enhancements for the board to review. That's outside the scope of today's review because today's review is solely focused on infrastructure, safety, and security. There are some academic and co-curricular projects that have been outlined, but those are related to existing projects and infrastructure work. So as we proceed, the goal is to fully understand the scope of work ahead and begin discussions about the appropriate funding mix to ensure Port Washington facilities remain strong for decades to come. But we should really pause on the funding conversation until Ms. Manuel comes. But I wanted you to have the context of the way in which the district currently funds capital improvement projects and the different mechanisms available to us. So with that, let me turn it over to Mr. Graham.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. You're going to hear from Mr. Grillo. You're going to hear regarding PW facilities. You're going to hear the findings of the 2023 building condition survey, which we've reviewed at least once before. But you're going to hear prioritization of district needs and potential next steps, as Dr. Fossey just outlined. Facility planning, as you know, is a balancing act. We're continually trying to strive to provide safe and comfortable facilities while also supporting the academic and co-curricular needs and enhancing the aesthetic quality of our buildings. We're currently completing the last few projects of the 2015 bond and have significantly increased our annual capital expenditures with the support of the board, so we are very appreciative of that. If you were to canvass the community, certainly the staff and the students, I think you would hear how positively the recent work has impacted the learning environments, music and athletics, and our partnerships with the community. Important to note is the two most recent bonds, which were both large bonds, 2004, the Boulevard and the ABC wing at Weber and Schreiber in 2015 included additions at Weber, Daly, Guggenheim, Sousa, Schreiber, and Manor Haven were all primarily driven by expansion and additions with not a lot of priority on infrastructure and existing systems. It's really a case of what you see versus what you don't see. Driving up Port Boulevard or Campus Drive, you're met with beautiful buildings, fields, well-maintained grounds, new entrances, very strong branding, which we're really proud of. But it's what you don't see that keeps us up at night. This is a topic you'll hear constantly among facility directors. It's the elements that are typically overlooked, the boiler rooms, the rooftop units, the infrastructure and the tunnels and the crawl spaces. And we've had recent examples of that in these past couple of years, which we'll review at the end. Upon Dr. Posse's arrival in Port, he immediately recognized these areas as needing focused attention and improvement. Having previously worked with many previous superintendents, I think I'm up to 10, I can confidently tell you he has a deep understanding of facilities needs and long-term planning. To better illustrate the situation, Dr. Posse asked us to separate the district needs into the 3 categories: safety and security, infrastructure, and academic and co-curricular. And then to further prioritize each recommended facilities improvement measure, FIM, that's one of those acronyms I'll often use, as a 1, 2, or 3. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Grillo, and he's going to help paint that picture.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. First, I just, as Brian is pulling that up, go through a really quick facilities update. Your building condition survey, your 5-year building condition survey was last done in 2023, which means we are next up for 2028. The State Education Department changed the way the BCS was formatted. It used to be every school district in the state was every 5 years. They changed that, so it's just 1/5 every year. In the last several years, what we had talked about in terms of, as Dr. Posse had said about the transfer to capital line items, we've continued on our roof replacement. I think we're probably 85 to 90% done with all of our roofs. We've done exterior masonry reconstruction. We started on our long-range plan for the interior electrical reconstruction and building system upgrades. So far, we're now working on the elementary schools, and we right now have meters on Weber to see how much actual electrical usage is going on versus how much is available. We've also replaced the tennis courts at the high school, as well as continued with district-wide vinyl asbestos floor tiling removal, or VAT. Actually, just, yeah, go ahead. Just some photographs. I know when I did the BCS back in February of '24. So those are my favorite shades of blue. There's a dark blue, a middle blue, and a light blue.
Those are our new branding colors,
That
aren't
is
they?
it.
Yes, yes.
They're there, though, I see them.
Yeah. Yes, I see.
I picked the middle.
Yes.
Okay, so if you did see these would be pictures of ugly boilers, curbs and sidewalks, old asbestos flooring, and interior doors and hardware.
There it is.
Oh, there they are.
There they are.
Wow, you adequately described them.
Yes,
Thank
so
you.
there
Yes.
are 1950s or 60s unit ventilators. On the left-hand side, the unit ventilator is what provides heat to a classroom, but more importantly, mechanical fresh air ventilation. They can also be used to provide cooling, but that is a whole nother animal, and the unit vents from 50 and 60 years ago cannot be retrofitted to provide cooling. Go ahead. Again, some curbs and sidewalks, old bathroom inside a storage room, and a typical rooftop unit. And then we have some boilers, and one of the things we're really focusing on the right-hand side are the interior doors. In terms of safety and security, really hardening the doors into the classrooms, the offices, and the places of public assembly.
And just to note, that is from some of the more recent school safety guidelines in terms of pulling out those full glass or partial glass doors, so that in the event that there was an intruder, it would make it more difficult for them to gain entry into classrooms.
Okay. So I know these are kind of hard to read from far away, but what we did was a couple of things. We updated each building in terms of 26, 27 costs, because we were already 4 years beyond, or from 2023, so now we're up to 26, 27 construction costs. As Dr. Posse had said, we broke it down into safety and security, which really focuses on interior doors and hardware. I've also added in there exterior doors and door hardening. As you know, I mean, unfortunately, bad guy used to go through the front door, and now they're finding other ways in, so we have to stay on top, make sure all of the exterior doors are hardened. Again, interior doors, our fire alarm systems, and our public address systems. Now, Currently, the fire alarm systems are not up to code, but you always have to remember that the code always changes. You're not required to, the second a new code change, start ripping things out. So if we do touch anything, a window, a door, a roof, a fire alarm, we then have to bring it up to the new code. So that's why I was indicating those as fire alarms and your communication systems or PA systems.
And John, just to clarify, those are things you should do together at the same time, or?
It does make sense to do them because you're pulling different wiring, but you're wrecking the ceiling only once instead of twice.
Okay.
So usually when we do something like that, we're doing that right now in Levittown, where the same contractor is doing PA and fire alarm system all at the same time, putting all the wiring, patching the holes if they break things, that kind of stuff. And then what we did after that was we prioritized with a 1, 2, or 3, 1 being the highest. And again, these are all building condition survey. These are things that no one would like to spend money on. If you're renovating your house, if you equate your house to a school, you'd much rather renovate your kitchen or your bathroom as opposed to replace your hot water heater or put a roof on your house. So again, infrastructure is really everything else: windows, doors, boilers, fields, ceilings and lighting. And then we started to look at a little bit academic and co-curricular, but we really don't have, we just have that as a placeholder right now. I know one of the things Dr. Passi looked at is if we start to replace unit events, we really have to look at the 1950s and 60s wood casework that's in all of the classrooms. So, I mean, I can go through each, or, so for example, the total, well, that was Daly. The total at Daly was $7 million. The total at Guggenheim was just under $6 million. This is if every project on every school was done at the same time. Only about $1 million worth of Salem. Salem has a lot of new HVAC. We're doing the last of the roofs coming up.
Salem was completely renovated when it went back online in 2004, which is why it's the outlier.
Manor Haven, about $10 million. And the one item at Manor Haven, I will note in green, that's the only, when you grade your building condition survey, you have to do excellent, satisfactory, unsatisfactory, critical failure, and non-functioning. You had one U, in my opinion, that was unsatisfactory. This is the large retaining wall. As you come up around the bend on the right-hand side, up top, it's really settling, the asphalt is settling. Brian and I and my engineer have done several tests and studies and soil borings. We'll take a look at the original drawings. I don't know how well it's reinforced, so if we had to do a project right away, that would be my recommendation. Just remember, on any capital project, in order to get the building aid that Dr. Passi talked about, when you do an outside project, you have to do something inside the building at the same time. And that has to be a minimum of $10,000 of hard costs or construction costs.
Similar to when we did the tennis courts, we did the 4 classrooms of flooring. And just also to note, the Manor Haven training wall is in our long-term capital planning for next year.
Schreiber, total is $17 million for everything. And this was one of the only ones at co-curricular that we have dollar amounts associated. If you go to the next slide, Brian. Your turf softball field, your turf baseball field, unfortunately, they have a warranty and an expected useful life. Usually, I've never seen a turf field not meet the 8-year requirement for guarantee. They do go at least 10 or 11 years. Now, normally the state education department will not fully fund in terms of building aid if the project doesn't last its expected useful life. So anything in this document must last 15 years. If it doesn't, they will prorate it. So for example, if it's down 11 or 12 years, we'll get 11/15 of our building aid. So you won't lose it all, we'll still get some, but it wouldn't be the full 15 years because it didn't last that 15-year life. But we did put those on there because they were replaced, I think, 8 or 9 years ago. So just to start to get onto the back of your mind.
They're not numbered, so would that be a 3?
I didn't really number co-curricular yet.
Oh, that's under E.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I mean, that would be more of, I mean, when you look at the co-curricular at the Schreiber, we talk about turf softball and turf baseball. To me, they would have to be a to-do now. The other one was a question that I forgot who had mentioned a couple of years ago about renovating the running track in the turf field in between Weber and the high school. Right now it's all grass.
Yes.
That would be kind of a nice to have as opposed to a need. The turf fields, at some point, we need to replace them because you need to make sure your Gmax is below 200. So
It's an
if you-
annual compliance test that we do each year to make sure it's safe to play.
and su-
Can I just clarify,
Sure.
when you say running track and turf field, you're literally just talking about the interior?
The oval of- yes.
The grassy area,
Yes.
not the, because we just redid the.
Correct.
We
just did structural
recoded
spray.
it. We did a recoding.
Recoding of it,
the-
right?
of
Okay.
the track. There has been requests on what would it look like to turf
The actual
Seaver Field.
grass.
Okay,
The actual grass, and then this also included the addition of the field events, right? Because they
Correct.
were not included in the recoding.
We would take those field events, right now they're running north and south on the east side, we'd take those out, relocate them, put one at each end and kind of reconfigure.
thank you.
Sousa was $8 million, all the projects. And then Weber is $13.5 million as identified on the building condition survey. And then we felt bad for the administration building, so that is about $200,000 just to replace the interior doors and exterior doors and hardening, soundproofing some of the walls, and then renovating the bathrooms. The ceilings are being replaced as part of the district-wide energy performance contract.
So just to clarify, this report excludes ventilation, the cost of any ventilation.
Funny you should mention.
Yeah.
So the girl in my office that puts these beautiful canvas together had hip surgery, so she left me with nothing to do but make a paper copy. So in the this spreadsheet that we have, this document, on the last page of it, I broke ventilation down and reminded me to never use blue. I thought it'd be cute to use blue before Washington, but I'm just gonna stay with white. So I broke it down into 5 categories. What would the cost be if we just add window air conditioners to all of the rest of the rooms, classrooms, offices, that currently do not have any kind of ventilation? And that was just under $1 million. When I presented this back 1.5 years ago, we had all of the electric service upgrades, which is now been taken out of here because now that is currently being funded. There is improved mechanical ventilation, which is the second category. Those are rooms that they have no mechanical or very limited mechanical fresh air ventilation. They have natural, if you can open a window. And believe it or not, that's still allowed in the building code. But school districts, when you start to go forward, they don't want to rely on a teacher opening the window on a wind-driven rain or a very, very cold day. They want ventilation in there 180 days of the year. So that number all in was just over $7 million. We then looked at,
It says it's back on camera. No, we don't have this. This wasn't
Do
included.
you want me to put it up? I have it just so you can.
do you have it?
Yeah.
Oh, good, 'cause
let me see.
You're gonna screen mirror?
Yeah. It just needs to give you the number.
No, you just have to,
Yeah, I did it, but it's asking for the, I think you have to switch the display up there.
it's on Apple TV.
We're having a minute of technical difficulty, so we're gonna organize ourselves for a minute here. So the cost of doing just window
Stream source out.
units is,
It's on.
improving the ventilation is compatible with that, cumulative with that, it's not separate? Or it is, or these are potentially separate
It
expenses?
depends on, that's how I broke it up into a matrix. So for example, the one below that is univent replacement. If we said we were gonna replace the univent in the classroom or the office, I would recommend putting in what's called a DX coil or a cooling coil. So now your univent in your classroom can provide heating, cooling, and ventilation.
So then you're not putting in the window units.
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna back up for 5 seconds,
It
and I
would-
want Brian to correct me if I'm wrong. On every building site tour, which
Yeah.
it's been due for you,
Yeah.
is we've talked about if we could just take an air conditioning unit and plug it in and put it in, what does that solve? What that solves is just to cool that room.
Yes.
It doesn't solve a ventilation issue. It has an energy, it's not energy efficient.
If your
and other things.
ventilation is working properly, you're exchanging that air 6 to 8 times per hour. So 6 times per hour, that air has been ventilated, exhausted, and new air has come in. So on a 90-degree day, we are consistently bringing in hot, humid air, then using a window air conditioner to try to cool it, and then exhausting it and bringing in new hot, humid air and trying to cool. It's not
Yes.
ideal. It does help us manage on those extremely hot days, but it is not the ideal indoor air quality, it is not energy efficient, and it does create some
And the
other issues.
ideal is the univents.
The univentilators
Yes.
have a air conditioning coil, and it works in conjunction with itself. We oversize those window units very significantly. That's why you saw when we did a $3,000 window unit, why do you need such an expensive window unit? Because we need to overpower it because the two systems are competing with each other.
Thank you, understood. What I was looking for clarification on, because my mind goes right to, okay, so how much is this gonna cost?
Yeah.
And I look at the grand total, which is the sum of all of the numbers in the far right column. But the grand total would depend on the plan. It would be some
Correct.
combination of these
100%.
numbers. This is
100%.
not the total.
Correct.
100%. This is all in worst case if we just did one thing across the board.
Yes.
You know, the Univent, you know, one of the questions on is what would, and a new question that is a result of Governor Hochul's recommendation or request to air condition every single school in every single New York State. There's a question that they added that you'll see in the 2028 building condition survey. How much would it cost to air condition the entire building to code? So we could go around and spend another $1 million and have every room in the district air conditioner. We met the requirement of what Kathy Hochul was asking,
Right,
but that's not the code.
right.
Code is as that warm air comes in, you pull out the moisture, and now it's dry and cold.
And we do have 2 separate pages for district-wide ventilation and for district-wide security projects. We're still waiting on some information for that. But again, this is very initial, high-level conversations. Those would be conversations that we would address in a potential, later step.
Of course.
And then the last really one is, large spaces in each building. I have some districts where we said, you know what, we're just gonna air condition the large spaces. We're not gonna add the classrooms because we need a cooling center. So this would be your gyms, your cafeterias, your library, any place of public assembly. Obviously, we pulled off the ones that have already been cooled and air conditioned as part of the last bond issue.
District-wide, we did air condition almost all cafeterias. Sousa was done this summer. The only one still pending is Weber, which is logistically a little challenging, but we hope to address this summer in our operational budget.
And that was my last,
This last point here, installation of new electrical sub-panels, just so that we understand, is that dependent on which project is chosen above?
so that, we don't need we will not need more electric to the building, but we may need distribution. So the large window air conditioners that Brian's talking about, each one requires, what do you do, a 20 amp circuit? for each one?
28,000 BTU.
Yeah, so we may be maxed out on our electrical panels, the panel inside your house, you open it up and you have all your circuits. So you would really need to we would have to do a further study to see if we need electrical panels to coincide with the window units. We don't want to put a window unit, run the circuit, and we have no place to get the power from.
And right now, that is an order of operations issue, so we didn't have adequate primaries or transformers or switchgear. That's all being addressed, the buildings it was needed in the capital reserve, scheduled for next summer. And then once that project is complete, then it will allow us to expand electric further downstream at the circuits.
That could be funded through that reserve that we have, the
Sure.
electrical reserve we have, that last ask.
Yeah, we have 3 buildings in development now. We're doing some data logging at Weber. We're trying to capture data to see exactly what and where we need it. Once that's done, we'll have a better picture on what will be left in that capital reserve to go and address, potentially the circuitry. Salem wasn't needed because it was updated in 2004. Schreiber was updated in the bond, and Daley was updated when the annex was built.
Right, but the only way to really achieve classroom cooling within our existing funding sources are to do it through the window AC
Yes.
installation.
Yes.
Right, so, John, I want to thank you for all your work on this, to the committee. I know that these are big and intimidating numbers. Again, this is just an initial deep dive, and our current level of capital expenditure, again, big improvement and huge momentous steps there, but it would take us approximately 20 years to fund one of these categories, let alone all of them. As a summary for Mr. Grillo presentation, priority ones only, and this is not everything that's needed, this is just priority 1, 2s, and 3s based on the most recent BCS. Priority 1 is approximately $36 million. Priority 1 and 2 would be $45 million. And all recommended facility improvement measures would be approximately $65 million. Exclusive of
air conditioning, right?
exclusive of the ventilation and the security departments. We are due for another building condition survey in 2028, so that's a 5-year cyclical program. That used to be all the districts at the same, now it's spread out 20% of districts annually. It's also important to note that some of the FIMs in those numbers are already in our long-range capital. So I'll give you an example of the Manor Haven retaining wall, right? That's $2 million, it's a priority 1, it's included in that 36, but it is something we plan to address in next year's capital fund. I also want to speak about cost avoidance. So in recent years, Dr. Posse, I know mentioned last year at Schreiber, we had a heat exchanger fail on an RTU that serviced the A, B, and C wings. That required us to put in temporary heaters in all classrooms for most of the winter. There was a long lead time on getting that part. This past summer or spring, we had a failure of the Weber chiller, which not only was a costly repair, but also incurred us to have to rent a unit for 3 months, which was very costly as well. And right now, the Weber library is also down with a similar repair to what we found last year with that cracked heat exchanger. These are expensive repairs. They're not budgeted for. They're critical, so they have to be, repaired. And often what happens is when we reach out to the manufacturers, when we talk to our engineers, they say, this is a unit that should be replaced, not repaired. And they're 20 years old, they're end of life. Most of those were in addition with the Schreiber and Weber editions of that 2004 bond. It's hard as us, usually the budget or the timeline doesn't allow for us to do the replacement, so we wind up doing a repair on a 20-year-old unit. But it's also hard for us to prioritize 20-year-old HVAC rooftop units when we have every boiler in the district is also end of life at 30+ years. Our unit ventilators, as Mr. Grillo pointed out, are original 1950 or 60 construction. So we have a lot outside of Salem again, because that was replaced in 2004. But this initial presentation is intended to begin the conversation of how do we want to address our long-term needs. Should we consider further increasing annual capital expenditures or explore the feasibility of a bond? And again, what that looks like financially, we would need Ms. Manuel to join us. And what a timeline would look like if we are going to look at a bond or a bond committee, how far and what does that timeline look like? And again, should we look to form a bond exploratory committee that could answer some of those questions, or does that happen at this committee?
Alvarez?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a quick question, I'm trying to remember which school. First Sousa, it was the only one with no need for a fire alarm system?
Sousa's fire alarm system is being done right now. It was included in the bond. It was originally not included in the bond because they had the STEM edition. The STEM edition fire alarm could not synchronize with the existing, so we were able to capture it in the bond program, and it's being done presently. It's being installed as we speak.
The other fire alarms in all the other buildings, because it's every single other building, when was the last time they were, when has it been updated? Like, when was it installed?
In our BCS, we could get you exact dates, but more than
Roughly?
20 years ago.
20 years, okay.
More than, yeah. Nothing is recent, but we can get that to you in an email with exact dates.
Yep.
And then the communication system is just more of like the, what is that thing called?
PA, public address?
PA.
Yep.
So-
But the PA is important. It does tie into our security systems, our lockdowns, our drills. So not only do we have to make the morning announcements, but we also need to be able to communicate in emergency situations.
But it's only literally the PA system, it's nothing with the doors as far as, the locks.
These numbers are for a PA system. As you can imagine, technology every day gets more and more integrated.
Yeah.
When we were ready to do it, if we were doing a door project at the same time, there's a potential that they would integrate and tie into each other.
Okay.
But
Not these numbers though, technically.
So those numbers for the interior doors would be new doors with intrusion alarm locks. So what you have here is, you have to remember that by code, anytime a door is closed and locked to a classroom, you can always grab the lever from the inside of the room and get out. So that's why you wanna harden the glass, so bad guy can't come, break the glass, reach in and get out. So there's several ways to address that. One is, you have your key on the outside in the hallway, and then another key on the inside of the classroom, so if God forbid there's a lockdown, you can run over, lock the door in the classroom, and you're safe. There's another one, which I've done in a couple districts, which is a push button. So anybody in a classroom, I'm teaching in the back of the room, and I say, Brian, the student, can you go, we're in a lockdown, go push the button. The other one, which is the most expensive, which is what we're working on now with that district-wide security piece, is basically card swipes. Where you walk in, you take your ID card, you open it up. There are two ways then to do that. Is it that every door must be closed at all times for code as well? So if the door is closed, is every door, when it's closed, automatically locked? And you can do that from your front end system. Go back to that, somebody goes to the bathroom, the teacher's gotta get up and open the door 9 times out of 10, all day long. You could do it where it's always unlocked, and then you would have what's called a one-button lockdown, where administrators and staff members could hit the button, all the doors automatically lock. So there's ways on that obviously is much more expensive. You're looking at another probably like $1,500 or $1,600 a door for that hardware, lockdown, wireless access points, repeaters, all of that good stuff.
Again, these are preliminary numbers. If we wanted to engage in that, we would dial down and get quotes, but almost all the systems do now integrate with each other.
But Sandra, the safety and security pieces here, the door hardening, for example, that recommendation was really made after Sandy Hook in 2012, and then it was after the shooting in Florida. The recap of that school shooting was that had the doors been hardened, it may have prevented some loss of life.
Yeah.
So those pieces, this is the worst thing for us to ever think about. But that kind of safety and security lens it's important that it be part of all these conversations, so thanks for raising it.
So, we talked about it on the facility tour last summer, which you weren't on, but the 2 summers ago.
I was gonna say.
2 summers ago. So I won't go into that conversation, that is very much security conversation, but as far as the one button lockdown and exterior doors, that's not in this.
That's we didn't get the full numbers we're working with digital provisions on those.
So remember, you
Still
said there's
waiting
2
on
pages that were
Okay.
not in there, the ventilation page and the security page. But we are working on it. We have long-term plans on the security lens, and again, if we, decided to move forward, those would be part of the conversation.
Which is is the door ajar system on the exterior doors.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was Uvalde or someone put a
Yeah,
little rock in the door, go to their
Uvalde.
car, the door. So these are set, so it's whatever, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. If a door stays open, it's propped open, an alarm will go off in the main office, you can call security, you can call somebody to go take a look at that. So that's one of the other items we're working on with digital provisions right now.
Thank you.
Ms. Malwani? Yeah, just a couple of questions. Is there anything in this report that could fall under the scope of another EPC? I know we've excluded
So
what's
the
in the current
EPC that we're doing right now was very difficult to piece together because the 2 previous EPCs really were heavy-handed on, we call the low-hanging fruit and the long payback. So when you do an EPC, they have to be hand in hand. Your LED, your lighting changes, some of that higher payback, almost instantly you get that payback. And then your boilers, which most districts do their boilers in an EPC, are offset
Kind of
by
where I
that
was
lower.
going with this.
When we were asked by the Board of Education to explore an EPC, it wasn't as easy. We were able to put solar in there, which paid for the ceilings at the administration building, Sousa, and Manor Haven, but we weren't able to do the boilers because there wasn't enough lighting to go back and do. The lighting had already been done, and it was done as a replacement or a retrofit versus a full fixture replacement. They just changed the bulb inside there. So there wasn't enough meat in the EPC to fund some of the longer term payback. So there is no also EPC funding. We're really in a race against the clock right now as a lot of the federal funding has been changing.
Yeah.
So that project was really as compact as we could make it, and we tried several different ways. We tried to look at a lot of stuff was that we tried to look at the univents, we tried to look at the boilers, we tried to fit the EV chargers in there. Everything we tried to do we couldn't get in there outside of what is in there. If that changes, we'll certainly, it's always, you know, an area that we're looking, where we'll take all the funding sources we can get, so we'll keep an eye on it.
Thanks. And in terms of the digital infrastructure for everything that we're doing, I mean, I didn't see that broken out here, and maybe it's academic and maybe it's co-curricular, but I'm thinking in terms of any systems that are included here that are smart systems that are accessible and, you know, digitally. Are our facilities equipped to handle that? And if not, how are we accounting for the improvements to our technology?
We work hand in hand with technology. The EPC, for an example, needs quite a few virtual machines and servers to accommodate the occupancy sensors and the timing that's gonna cut off all that vampire energy. But that was developed with technology and in Mr. Maloney's long-term plan. It's not accounted for in this funding, but he has, every time we do a project, if it's gonna require back-end, the PAs, again, they'll go from analog, they'll go to digital, that will be part of the project, and those numbers are loaded in Mr. Grillo's.
Thank you. And just a quick clarification, you mentioned 20 years to complete each one of the priority areas, or just everything that's here?
No, it's each,
Under our
yeah,
current
before-
under our
at
current funding approach.
$4.2 million per year.
Per year, it's gonna take
It
us
would take
20
20
years
years
to get
to
to
do-
$65 million. Okay.
And as we've learned,
And-
it'll
and-
probably be longer because
Well, and
cost of
stuff
life
breaks
increases.
Well, the
and
turf
everything
fields is a
else.
good example of that too, you know, they're gonna be due for replacement, or you talk about adding Seaver Field, but in 8 years now it's a consumable, now it's, you know, so not only do you have that upfront cost, but you have that replacement factor.
Right, which I feel like we just put the turf fields in, and that was just a long conversation. Free me being on the board, but I sat through a lot of those meetings. Does anyone else have any more questions specific? Oh,
Clarifying question.
go right ahead, that's fine.
So, is it next budget meeting that curricular is gonna be presented?
No, so I think what the concept is, at least if I'm understanding it, especially how Dr. Posse presented it, is that the next budget meeting is when we're really gonna start talking about the nitty-gritty numbers and financing this and how we would look to finance it or fund these capital plans. The suggestion that's been brought for us, two suggestions, the first being forming a bond committee, Dr. Posse said, and in that time, that committee would come through together to discuss some of those co-curricular endeavors. But Mr. Graham just asked us, should we have a pre-bond exploratory committee, right? Or should that be a part of this committee to kind of start discussing some of those things? So to answer your question, it depends on the direction that we decide to go. If we wanted to do a pre-bond exploratory committee or do some of that discussion here in this committee, I think we could discuss some of the curricular aspects, but I think there is a benefit to having a larger committee discuss it, because you're going to have staff on there, parents on there, greater knowledgeable people that will have all perspectives take into account, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the important thing to recognize that this has to be, the building condition survey has to be the foundation of, you know, when the district decides to take out another bond is up for discussion, and when Ms. Manuel is here, it would be best for her to be involved in that. But when the district decides to do that, then the exploratory committee will say what needs to be enhanced in terms of academic and co-curricular that would really be on top of the infrastructure needs that we have. The infrastructure needs have to be addressed. So it's just a matter of, you know, how do we want to address them? How long can we go on with $4 million being transferred to capital? We'll be able to, you know, take off a project here and there. But if we want to, let's say, harden all of the doors, we want to update all of our fire alarms, we want to update our PA systems, we want to do a large-scale asbestos abatement project in our buildings. That won't happen with $4 million a year. You know, that's going to require this forklift project to take place, which again is part of the it's part of the funding options that are available. And typically districts rely on transfers to capital and capital reserves in between bond issuances. So the question is, when is the best time for the next bond issuance? And then I would say ideally you'd have a representative committee come up with the details of what should be included in there, but the foundation of it has to be the building condition survey, so that we address some of the things that were missed in the last couple of bonds, because the last couple of bonds were focused on expansion.
We did kind of discuss a timeline at the last budget meeting.
We did, but we would like to solidify some of our financial numbers first with Ms. Manuel present before we discuss. So,
Next
so in
budget
December, we could talk a little bit more about that timeline if the committee is agreeable to that direction. Okay.
We don't need to discuss any timeline at the moment.
Right.
Correct,
Until we even decide if that's a timeline we're looking at.
correct, correct. However, are the questions asked at this point? Have you asked your questions or do you have more? Yeah, I know you always
Waiting
have.
for Kathy.
Well, you haven't wait for Kathy of questions. I'm talking about for the purposes of this
Yeah,
meeting.
yes,
Have you asked your questions?
Yes.
So
No, is there anything else for Mr.
anything for Mr. Grillo?
Yeah.
You've segued very nicely though into, and I don't know that,
Are you gonna send it without the blue?
I am 100%
That would
agree.
be, okay.
Yes.
I've learned my lesson.
I just want to
We
read the little
appreciate that,
notes.
yes.
Oh, God, tell me about it.
yes, no, thank you. That does though, one of the conversations that was here is, and we've talked about, is that capital repair reserve.
Yep.
I do think, I will make the recommendation that I think we've seen that there's been a great benefit from adding additional reserves and doing some of these facility plans from. I, as a member of this committee, would feel comfortable recommending to the board that that would be something that we would want to add to the ballot for the upcoming budget season. I would like to just have some insight from you all if this is a direction you'd like to go as well. And I'm not discussing terms, I'm just getting a sense of our committee so that then we can finalize those terms at our next meeting. How's that sound? And bring to the board.
I have no problem discussing it.
Okay.
I'd like to hear from Kathy as well on that.
Okay.
Because at this point, for me, with some of the reserves, it is, what it has felt like so far is that if we're gonna have 5 reserve, like if we have so many things, we're just putting like $1 here, $1 there, obviously bigger number than $1. But really the priority list as well, like, so Kathy, really, so this year the 4 million went in, but so if
The
that
4
were-
million is transfer to capital.
transfer account, different.
Totally separate and
Yes,
apart,
yes.
okay.
But like, so if there's an excess of 2 million next year.
Correct.
She would just present to us, this is how I would like it broken down, like what to do with that 2 million.
And we would discuss that, yes.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it, it just seems like it's the chicken or the egg, because in the end, whatever excess we have, we've, like, I don't remember exactly where we took the money this year from, with the Weber need and what's gonna get moved and everything just gets moved in general. But when a repair is needed, funds just seem to move as needed to pay for that repair.
Right.
And sometimes reserves are used and then restocked, so in the end, it's like.
So I will tell you, so I hear what you're saying, so I hear what you're
Tomatoes.
saying, I think what you've seen actually though, from our financial situation is any of the money that we've been utilizing to make up any stop gaps, right, for the most part, with the exception of the EPA issue with the pumps, the fuel oil tanks, thank you. We did pull from our reserves there, like for TRS and ERS, we've pulled from some of those
Yeah.
reserves to create, to correct shortfalls within our budget, to bring us at that tax levy limit that we need to be at, but those weren't necessarily to fund repairs, or to do any of the work. And again, we do keep our actual fund balance reserves for those emergencies. So if we need funding for the air conditioning unit, not that we necessarily took from there, but we could fund from there if we needed to, if a ceiling falls in and we don't have the necessary funds available in our operating budget, we can fund from those right immediately. But this would be allowing us, again, to just plan a little better, and as we've seen even with the electrical reserve, and prioritize a little better too.
So I think what I'm hearing, what my question was, is this simply earmarking funds in a line item designated for this purpose? And that makes Kathy's work of managing the funds a little easier? Or is there a potential benefit to the taxpayer to doing it this way, to sort of allocating our funds in this way? I think that's My instinct tells me that this is a good idea and this is a best
Of
practice.
course, yeah.
I just wanna understand the
Yeah,
benefits a
so-
little better.
That's an excellent question. One clarification, so there are some reserves, such as the capital reserve, that we say, okay, we have X amount of fund balance at the end of the school year. This is a reserve that we'd like to allocate it to. The repair reserve operates a little bit differently because it's funded through a budgetary appropriation. So the repair reserve has a budget line that we put in the operating budget. Let's say we wanted to fund it modestly, $150,000, right? We would just put a line in our budget that says $150,000 to go to the repair reserve. And then voters approve the funding of that through their budget, through the budget vote. If we want to then expend it, because we have an expense that comes up, that requires us to expend it, we go to the board, we hold a public hearing, 2/3 of the board have to agree to spend the money from the repair reserve for that. So it's funded a little bit differently in that it's not funded through fund balance, it's actually it's a
But that's
very-
for
It's a
excess,
line.
it's funded very different, so it's like we do our playground fund,
it's a line
it's a
item.
line item. Can you fund from excess?
We'll ask Kathy.
Okay, so
to be
those are,
sure.
these are our good questions, so that's why we need to.
Yeah.
You're very good then that you brought that up, so that,
It was a-
it was a collaboration of all parts then,
Yeah,
right?
we'll ask
Okay,
Kathy to
okay.
clarify, but the important thing is that it is funded through a line item, and then what it allows is that if something unexpected happens and it's a repair, not a replacement, then we have the funding available as compared to searching for the funding, which, we happened to have some, we happened to have some unanticipated retirements after the budget was adopted that allowed us to do that. But in a year where that becomes more difficult, you might have to make some more where that is not the case, you might have to make some more difficult choices.
The only other question I have for the next time we do bring this up is, as far as administration goes, if you feel like this would be too much red tape, because, in the summer, that was an easy, there's an issue, we need to get it done with the Weber, the AC, but this is, you need 2/3 of the board to vote, and then you need to have a public hearing. That sounds like a lot of timeline for something called repairs, when it seems like it's something very emergency needed. So far, in the last 2 years, it's been something twice, I think, that it's been like, this is an emergency, we have to get it done. Whereas this sounds smart, but I'm wondering if it's just gonna cause a delay, and what if the board says no?
Well, I think this is more fiscally prudent to
Okay.
have money set aside to address repairs rather than hope that there is some excess money available that
right.
won't impact program,
Yeah.
somewhere down the line.
Right.
So, so I
You
would
typically see
recommend,
repair reserves used for like boiler replacements or fuel tank, which have long lead times and the
Yeah.
processes, and there's typically a short-term solution while we wait for
Right.
the repair. So this isn't, a small repair, these are large
Need it
ticket
next
items.
And I think a
Yeah.
question for Kathy would be, does having this repair reserve preclude you from addressing emergent repairs through other
no, it does not.
sources?
Nope.
So in that emergency situation, we could still move money from somewhere else to deal with it.
As an
Right.
emergency.
And which is what we typically do, and sometimes we cancel or defer other projects,
Right.
and this would allow us to move that money, spend that solution, wait for the repair reserve to be authorized, and then go back and fund the projects that maybe we deferred.
And then remember, an emergency is eligible for building aid. We couldn't get the building aid on a fuel oil tank because it's not a school. But if something happened at the building, we have to declare an emergency, that is eligible for building aid. Usually repair reserve is not because it's smaller. It's the heat exchanger, which is part of the larger piece of mechanical equipment kind of thing. So that's just something else to think about.
Yeah, the building aid is an important part of the conversation when Kathy comes back, because 23.7% would be eligible for aid.
So what is your recommendation at this point? Is it
My
on
recommendation
pause or-
it's still on pause. It sounds like we're interested in exploring the conversation and we have some outstanding questions, is what I heard from this conversation. So I put it on our tickler and I already have the questions ready to make sure that Kathy is prepared for at the next meeting as it relates to the capital repair reserve. I know we have other questions, but since we discussed that here. Does that sound good? All right.
It's only 4 o'clock in Italy, if you wanna
Italy.
give her,
You
shoot
know,
her a text.
I know she really is missing us right now,
She
but
would love that.
we'll be nice to her and let her enjoy her time away, yes. I will just bring up that we did have a piece of old business last meeting, about the question on the technology charging stations. And, as you'll see on the agenda for tomorrow night, we're transferring funds, to help fund the next phase of it. So I believe we're at about 50% installed or in receipt of.
Sousa is done, Daily is being done as we speak, and we have the next phase,
The next phase
batch
is
ready,
coming.
and then this phase will be funded tomorrow.
Wonderful, all
Do you
right.
mind I'm sorry
Thank
to
you for
interrupt.
that.
Do you mind just listing the 3 other schools, just so I could go back to parents? Just
Sousa is complete, it's been complete for a while. Daily, we just assembled them on Friday, I believe they're being disseminated today. I don't know where the balance, but we still have some other units that will go to one of the other schools, and then this phase will finish the project.
So, thank you for that, Mr. Graham.
What's the timeline? So if it's paid.
Let's,
Okay.
if we wanna know the timeline, we can ask that and we can let them get back to us at the next meeting as a follow-up at this point, but we did not ask for them to prepare that information for us at this
Well, I mean, it's
point.
just like the same timeline of the original, no? Wouldn't it be something similar? If I order it and pay for it today and it took 3 months, then I know that the timeline would be 3 months.
I don't wanna,
I don't
wanna
wanna-
speak for technology, but I will tell you that the past 2 phases we've done, it's been relatively quick. Once we order them, they come in. Once we receive them, we get them out pretty quickly. As soon as we receive them, they're put together within a couple days and they're put into the classrooms. There's not a big infrastructure need or a lot of logistics. When we get them, we will get them out.
Thank you.
Thank you. All
I'll
right.
do it now. I'm just kidding.
Okay, this is why
I'm joking.
All right, so since that portion of our old business, new business, anything else anyone wants to bring up, I'm gonna open it up to community comments. Do we have any comments from our community members? Ms. Feingold?
I have a question. On the turf, the replacing of the turf, so I understand replacing it, but I remember, like for Seaver Field, why are we considering turfing that over? I know, like, I just know that there are like environmental concerns with turf, and I know that, like at prior meetings, you were working really hard to give golf
Natural
balls good
turf, yeah,
grass,
turf
like,
grass,
like,
yeah. We are, absolutely. The front field at Weber and Seaver Field. The benefits to turf are they can be used in all weather. So Seaver Field particularly is used by Weber for recess. So we try to keep them off of there, obviously, when it's raining, but also the day after it rains, sometimes 2 days after it rains, because we want that field to dry, because that's what damages the turf grass and the ability to make it available for athletics. There's definitely conversations and feelings on both sides of that, and we'd have to bring in more people to discuss that, and that would be part of the process, including Mr. Schrottweiser, including Ms. Javelin, but certainly the biggest benefit to turf is 10 minutes after it rains, it has drainage, and it can be used.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Are you looking at injuries with turf though? Because turf is, a lot of young athletes now are getting hurt on turf versus natural grass. So there are a lot of young kids blowing out ACLs at 12, 14, 16. How do you guys assess that?
It'd be part of the conversation. There's a lot of data, again, supporting both sides are the diagnosis just better? Are there more diagnosis of injuries? Natural grass, there's a lot more work that goes into making sure it's level. Right now, Seaver Field is closed down, right? We had a project go on there, it made ruts that presented a danger, and the same thing with the Weber front field. If you remember, that was a parking lot. It was turned into a field, but the drainage isn't really there, so the ground is not consistently level, which is why we've done some pretty big enhancements in making sure that grass is safe and level, where there's arguments that turf, it's easier to see, right? When the referees look for any imperfections or inconsistencies in that level, that you can see it visibly, where you can't always see it in grass. But that's not a facilities level decision, that would be something that would involve the community and Mr. Schrottweiser certainly.
It sounds like part of the conversation that would occur during the committee meetings as well,
Yeah.
so yes. So TBD still on some of them. Any other questions?
I have
Yes.
another quick question, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but as we talk about air conditioning, it's like a hot topic with parents and stuff as it gets hot. Are there any, I guess, if any of this was approved and the budget passes and we could put window units, just timing wise, like, does that mean you do it over the summer and for this coming
So totally
school year?
exclusive of this conversation, we have already been working on a short-term solution to provide air conditioning. We have 82 classrooms remaining that do not have air conditioners. Last year, the board authorized a $30,000 increase in the operational budget, specifically to air conditioning classrooms. We were able to do, I want to say 30 of them this year, between that $30,000 and some other operating funds. And our hope is to have all classrooms air conditioned within the next 3 years.
So you'll see that, again, I
And
think,
we have a priority, this year, we have 14 rooms that are on the second floor, so those are certainly our priorities. By next year, we're confident that all second floor classrooms will be air conditioned. We work with the building principals on which classrooms have the most use, or have the most sunlight, right? So we really worked to, but we're confident that within the next 3 years, exclusive of this conversation, all classrooms will be air conditioned.
Okay, thank you.
anything else? Thank you, Mr. Graham, for all that. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we will see everyone for part 2, the deep dive of the nitty-gritty, December 15th for our budget and facility meeting, 9 a.m. here in this room. Thank you, have a great day, and happy Thanksgiving.